intimidating because it's the largest piece of the greenhouse. It's so big. But once you get it up and get going, it's not that difficult. The Bootstrap Farmer plastic is a 4-year 6 mil plastic. It has a UV stabilizer built into it, an anti-condensation layer to keep the drips from coming down on top of your plants. This is a much different plastic than what you would buy at the hardware store, which will shred and fall apart within the first season. It's best to install your Bootstrap Farmer plastic on a day that's not windy. Have at least 4 people, although you can do it with 2. Have some sort of stick with a round top, a tennis ball, or a broom to help push the plastic over the hoops. You'll need to have string for the corners that you will throw over the top and that you will pull down on the other side to pull the plastic out over the hoops. You'll need a ladder or 2 to help secure the plastic on the ends and over the hoops. When you're installing your large piece of plastic, make sure that the wording, you can read it from the inside, is facing down or inside. The goal is to get the piece of plastic over the entire hoop, ground to ground, and down the sides, ground to ground. You need to have a little bit of extra hanging off each of the 4 sides so you have something to grab a hold to and attach it to the hoop house. So you're going to start on one end wall. You're going to start at the top of the hoop with the plastic, and you're going to spring wire all the way down one side to the hip board, and you're going to start back at the top in the middle, and you're going to spring wire back down the other side to the other hip board. The next step is to go to the opposite end, pull the plastic with the help of some people underneath holding it, pull it taut all the way over the second end wall. Repeat that step. Start in the middle with your spring wire, go down to the hip board on one side, put another piece of spring wire in the top, go down that side to the hip board, and now both end walls are attached at the very top of both end hoops. If you do not have a roll-up side, you'll drop the plastic all the way to the ground to your baseboard, and you'll use the spring wire to attach it on the baseboard down both sides. If you do have a roll-up side, you'll drop that plastic down to the hip board, you'll attach the plastic in the channel with the spring wire all the way down both sides. The next step is to go to the opposite side and with the help of 2 other people, pull the plastic down tight. Go to your hip board if you have a roll-up side and attach the spring wire. If you don't have a roll-up side, go to the footer or the baseboard with the help of your helpers pulling it down tight and go down the whole baseboard with your spring wire and attach the plastic that way. This is a good time to walk the perimeter of your hoop house and look for wrinkles or sags or anything that looks unusual, and then undo the wiggle wire in those spots and pull it tight with a helper and then reattach the spring wire in those points. Look at all 4 corners of your hoop house and make sure there's no wrinkles and no sags. If you chose to include a roll-up side, you would have already put together the 3/4 inch EMT and lay that down the footer of your greenhouse. With the drop-down plastic, you now clip that plastic to that 3/4 EMT that's already connected to the crank. Then you can start rolling up the roll-up side. Make sure that you crank and roll up the plastic inward so that there's nowhere for the water that's running off to collect into that roll-up side. Next, you're going to cut off or trim the plastic that's already hanging off on the end wall. You want to make sure to cut this plastic with the roll-up side crank all the way to the ground. Now that you've trimmed off that excess piece, you're going to lay that on the ground and make sure that the wording is readable from the inside of the greenhouse. You're going to start attaching that piece of plastic across the footer of the end wall. Then you're going to take the plastic and hold it up with your helpers to the side of your end wall, and you're going to start on the top again. You're going to use the same channel, but a second set of spring wire. And you're going to spring wire down that piece, down the left and down the right, until you get to the hip wall. As you're installing the spring wire, make sure you pull up and diagonal to make sure that the plastic is smooth with no wrinkles or gaps as you're installing the spring wire. Next, you're going to install the wiggle wire around your door frames and any of the vertical posts that are going up and down. This is going to even further strengthen and tighten the plastic that's on your end wall. Next, we're going to install spring wire that's in the channel that's on the door frame itself. Next, you're going to trim off the excess plastic around the hoop and across the baseboard with a sharp pair of scissors or X-Acto knife to make sure you get a clean edge. Leave about 1 inch. Next, you're going to trim out or cut out between the frame and the door frame so that your doors are free to swing open. If you're adding a second layer of plastic for the inflation kit, you'll repeat the process. You'll throw the plastic over the hoop. You'll use the same channels, but another piece of spring wire to attach that second piece of plastic. It'll cover from hip to hip and from first hoop to last hoop, but it won't go to the ground.
If you keep running, just stay on your toes. You know I don't play by the rules. If you fucked up, one's got to go.